Stop clinging to armor when your soul longs to breathe. You've been told that toughness is your only path to survival, black women, as though vulnerability were a crack in your foundation. Yet you stand at the edge of a paradox. Your greatest power lies in the very softness you've been trained to conceal. Imagine a diamond forging itself in gentle heat, not in relentless pressure. How often do you allow yourself the warmth of honest feeling over the searing glare of forced resilience? You awaken each morning with a clenched jaw, expecting the world to demand every ounce of steel you possess. You've memorized the mantra, endure, perform, survive. But beneath that mantra, a quieter truth pulses. Carl Jung warned of the peril in denying our tender edges, suggesting that what we repress eventually roars back with greater force. How long will you let hidden storms churn within you, black women, before they break through your defenses? Picture yourself as a reed in a stormy river. Bend too little, and you snap. Bend too much, and you drown. You've learned to resist the current, to brace every gust with unyielding resolve. But perhaps strength is not the absence of movement, but the art of yielding. Consider Nietzsche's insight: true greatness often blossoms in the fertile soil of surrender. When did you last stop resisting the tides of emotion and let them carry you? You wear your invincibility like an invisible shield, convinced that vulnerability is an admission of weakness. Yet that shield weighs you down, carving lines of tension across your spirit. You trade genuine connection for safe performances. You silence your laughter when it feels too bright, too alive, lest it draw unwanted attention. You swallow your tears so your colleagues won't mistake you for soft. But what is the cost of keeping your inner spring bottled up? Remember the last time your heart surged with a feeling you couldn't name. You pushed it aside because it felt risky. You've built walls to guard against disappointment, only to find that walls imprison both danger and delight. Somewhere inside, a quieter self waits, longing to taste the richness of unguarded moments. Sunlight on bare skin, the thrill of confession, the relief of unfiltered tears. How many of those moments have you sacrificed to avoid appearing fragile? Look back at your history. Generations of black women before you carried burdens heavier than most could imagine. They stitched their pain into quilts of survival, patching tears with whispered prayers. They danced through storms with smiles that masked their weariness. Their resilience is woven into your DNA, but so is their capacity for tenderness. You owe it to their legacy to unlearn the lie that softness must be sacrificed at the altar of strength. Data reminds you that suppressed emotion can become a silent predator: heart disease, anxiety, self-doubt, creeping beneath conscious awareness. Studies show that emotional expression correlates with resilience, not its opposite. But how often do you treat your emotional life as a liability instead of a resource? Black women, you've been scripting your narrative according to a playbook written by fear and expectation. Whose story are you living? You stand at the threshold of a revelation. To embrace vulnerability is to unlock a deeper tier of authenticity. It is not a retreat from power, but a portal to a power that does not demand exile of your truest self. It is the bird that learns both the song and the silence. But will you cross that threshold, black women, and discover the strength in your softness? How will you answer the question that echoes through your bones? What if your greatest weapon is your willingness to feel? You've been shaped by currents older than memory. Black women, you carry the weight of ancestral expectations as though they were your own. Centuries of survival etched into your spine, reinforcing the notion that vulnerability equals downfall. You've inherited a blueprint that scripts you as unbreakable, a matriarch who endures slights, neglect, and exhaustion without flinching. But that script was written in the ink of oppression, not empowerment. When did you agree to play a role defined by other people's fears? History whispers reminders. Your foremothers labored under the glare of vigilant eyes, judged harshly for any sign of weakness. They silenced sorrow to protect their children. They swallowed grief to sustain their communities. They learned that tears could be traded for stigma, and that confessions of pain invited scrutiny, not solace. Unconsciously, you adopted this legacy. You keep your softest parts locked away behind fortified gates, convinced that exposure invites assault. Yet the strongest steel is tempered in openness, not isolation. Psychologically, you've been sold a mirage, a promise that relentless endurance leads to liberation. Yet research tells another story. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology found that emotional suppression correlates with increased stress, impaired immune response, and cognitive decline. By refusing to express your inner world, you tighten chains around your own growth. Black women, you're caught in a paradox, deploying so much energy to fortify your facade that you starve the very spirit you aim to protect. Carl Jung observed that what we refuse to see in ourselves repeatedly emerges in our lives like a phantom sabotaging our sense of wholeness. Your unspoken fear of judgment, of failure, of seeming weak, hides in the shadows, shaping your decisions. You may have climbed the corporate ladder, but at what cost? You may have built a thriving family, but are you present for its joys? The invisible script of Stoicism demands your compliance even as it drains your vitality. Philosophically, Nietzsche challenged the glorification of unyielding strength, arguing that true power arises in the tension between opposing forces. He called this the mercurial soul, one that dances between extremes, harnessing vulnerability as fuel for creation. Yet black women, you've been guided toward the extreme of toughness alone, never encouraged to discover the alchemy of courage blended with softness. The doctrine you inherited erases the nuance that makes you fully human. You tell yourself that vulnerability would slow you down, that exposing your fears will set you back. But what if the opposite is true? Viktor Frankl, in his Reflections from the Holocaust, noted that meaning springs from the tension between what one has and what one seeks. By acknowledging your desires, companionship, rest, emotional intimacy, you illuminate a path toward purpose. By denying those desires, you wander in a wasteland of obligation, never pausing to feel the heartbeat beneath your armor. Cultural forces amplify these internal pressures. You're lauded when you accomplish feats against all odds, celebrated as a superwoman who conquers discrimination with a smile. Social media reinforces the narrative. Images of poised black women excelling in every arena proliferate, leaving no room for cracks. You post success and hide struggle, cultivating an illusion of seamless triumph. This curated perfection deepens the chasm between your public self and your inner world. Yet beneath the surface, fissures widen. Unspoken expectations become a silent tormentor. You may experience insomnia, forgoing rest to keep schedules intact. You may find solace in caffeine and adrenaline, rather than the luxury of tears. You may rely on perfectionism as a shield, believing that flawlessness wards off criticism. But perfectionism is a paper shield, an illusion that can't withstand the storms of real life. Data paints a stark picture. Black women are twice as likely to experience high blood pressure compared to peers with stress as a primary driver. Anxiety disorders affect 1 in 6 black women, yet only a fraction seek treatment, deterred by stigma and mistrust of healthcare systems. You see the toll of suppressed emotion in every statistic, yet when was the last time you confronted the truth in your own mirror? Your psychology is bound by an unspoken social contract. You exist to prop up others, rarely to be supported yourself. You comfort weary friends, troubleshoot workplace dramas, and uplift your communities. But when you cradle your own tears, you hear an echo of unwanted discomfort, an echo you stifle. Who told you that your feelings are too cumbersome, too chaotic, too incongruent with the ideal you're expected to embody? And so the invisible script writes itself anew each day. You stand tall while your roots go thirsty for emotional nourishment. You navigate boardrooms and ballrooms with grace, secretly longing for someone to hold the lantern for your inner corridors. You proclaim your accomplishments, but bury your questions. Am I enough? Am I allowed to need help? Black women, these questions hum beneath your skin, waiting for your permission to surface. The root of this problem is a dynamic interplay of history, psychology, and societal myth. You didn't choose this narrative. It was written before you drew breath. But recognizing its existence is your first act of rebellion. You're not broken for feeling it's the script that's fractured. And as you unravel its threads, you'll see the raw beauty of your design, complex, resilient, and above all, authentically yours. A weight settles into your bones each morning. Black women, like an unseen chain tightening around your chest. You push through meetings with a poised smile, even as adrenaline spikes in your veins, your amygdala primed by conditioned vigilance. Neuroscience reveals that chronic stress rewires your brain, heightening reactivity and dulling your joy. Your heart races at the slightest provocation, and yet you dismiss the tremor as normal. How long will you ignore the signal that your body is pleading you to pause? By mid-afternoon, exhaustion settles in like toxic fog. You reach for another coffee thinking just one more push. Meanwhile, cortisol surges through your bloodstream, fueling inflammation. A 2021 study in the Journal of Women's Health found that Black women reporting high levels of emotional suppression were 60% more likely to develop metabolic syndrome, a cluster of conditions that invites diabetes, heart disease, and early mortality. You're inching toward that statistic, trading your health for the illusion of invulnerability. Your relationships bear the hidden fallout. You scratch out moments of tenderness because you fear vulnerability will undo you. Your partner's caring glance feels like a test you must pass without falter. You retreat behind rigid politeness when you crave intimacy, believing that emotions are liabilities. Friends note your distance and comment on your cool confidence, unaware that behind the facade, another narrative unfolds, one of loneliness and the ache of unshared burdens. Career achievements gleam like trophies in your resume, but at what cost? You arrive early, stay late, and absorb every microaggression without complaint. You're lauded as a force in the boardroom, yet your voice trembles when you dare to propose ideas that swim too close to your true desires. You self-sabotage by second-guessing your brilliance, haunted by the whisper, "What if I'm not enough?" Meanwhile, promotions slip through your fingers, reserved for those who play by the harsher rules of corporate combat. Cultural bias compounds these struggles. The strong Black woman stereotype paints you as impervious, rewarding you for self-sacrifice and penalizing you for authentic need. You feel compelled to be ever ready, ever able, never cracking under pressure. Social media amplifies this, streaming images of flawless excellence. You applaud their triumphs and shame your own moments of softness. You archive every victory and bury every fracture, cultivating a curated portrait rather than a lived reality. Anecdotes surface in hushed tones. Your friend Maya describes breaking down in a restroom stall, tears soaking her blouse as she whispered prayers. A colleague, Tanisha, confided she cancelled therapy sessions because she feared stigma. They followed the same codebook you live by, no admission of weakness. Yet each secret breakdown chips away at your foundation, eroding your capacity to sustain the facade any longer. Direct exposure of emotion feels like abdicating control, as though your inner world will spill into chaos. But studies in emotion science contradict this fear. Expressing feelings engages your parasympathetic nervous system, initiating repair. Allowing tears can lower blood pressure and release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Yet you avoid these natural remedies, convinced that composure is survival's currency. The silent fallout creeps into your mental landscape. You may experience intrusive thoughts, what-ifs that gnaw at your peace. Sleep eludes you as your mind rehearses tomorrow's challenges. Decision fatigue wears you thin. You make smaller choices with zeal, but postpone life-changing leaps. Behind every step forward glimmers a caution that you'll be judged if you stumble. You carry guilt for taking breaks as though rest were a forbidden luxury. You overschedule yourself to prove worthiness. You skip meals to meet deadlines. You silence your inner child's longing for play and wonder. The result is a life half-lived, measured in tasks completed rather than joy savored. What echoes in the empty rooms of your psyche is the question, who are you beyond your productivity? You see the cracks stretching across your community. Mothers pass the code to daughters like heirlooms. Be strong, be silent. You're raising a generation shackled by the same script unless you choose to rewrite it. Each suppressed sob, each swallowed fear, becomes another barrier between you and the life you could inhabit. It's a catastrophe of quiet proportions, and yet the cost remains invisible to most. You tally achievements while tallying losses, 2 lost moments of laughter that might have mended a heart lost embraces, that could have eased a soul lost chances to say I need help. You've become an island of excellence, adrift in solitude, waiting for a rescue you never requested. How long can you black women keep paying this cost? You stand at the precipice of your own story. Black women with two paths before you, one paved in veiled pain, the other painted with authentic self. What if the antidote to exhaustion is not pushing harder, but leaning into your tremor? Real rebellion begins when you trade the fortress of steel for the gateway of openness. Consider the story of Maya Angelou, who transformed her trauma into poetry that resonated across generations. She didn't bury her pain. She honored it on the page, weaving vulnerability into her art. Through confession, she found power, and through power, she found healing proof that soft words can move mountains. You too can channel your inner reckoning into creation. What might you build if you let your tears water your roots? Shift your mindset from "I must survive" to "I deserve to feel." That simple switch unsettles the old script. Viktor Frankl wrote that even in the direst prisons, prisoners discovered freedom in their responses. You black women hold the key to your own liberation by granting yourself the right to respond emotionally. It's not surrender, it's sanctuary. Begin with tiny acts of defiance. Speak your mind in a meeting when your heart trembles at the thought. Send a raw text to a trusted friend, "I'm hurting." Practice drawing a breath and letting your chest soften when anxiety grips you. Each time you permit feeling, you widen the door for authenticity. Over time, those tiny revolts accumulate into a revolution of self. Look to Audre Lorde, who declared that your silence will not protect you. She threw words like torches into the darkness, lighting paths for those who followed. You don't have to recreate her brilliance. You only need to speak your truth in your own voice. What unlived truths stir in your heart waiting for release? Challenge the superwoman myth by scheduling unguarded time. Block off 30 minutes daily to sit with a journal, letting words flow uncensored. Notice how small cracks appear in your armor, letting light seep through. Track your emotional patterns, when joy rises, when grief surfaces, so you learn the rhythms of your inner world. Through data from your own life, you'll see that vulnerability is not erratic. It's essential. Form alliances with other black women who choose softness over stoicism. Gather in circles, real or virtual, where your confession becomes currency of connection, not condemnation. Share stories of failure, shame and fear, and watch how each revelation welds a bond stronger than any solitary facade. How vibrant might your life become when you're no longer isolated in your silence? Adopt the mantra of paradox. I am both fierce and fragile. Repeat it when doubt creeps in. Allow your contradictions to coexist without judgment. Nietzsche's will to power is not a call to crush vulnerability, but to harness it as fuel. You can be a tiger and a child at once, roaring for justice and laughing at life's small wonders. Rewrite your internal dialogue. Each time you catch yourself mocking, a tear pause and reframe. Tears are proof of my humanity. Each self-critique about weakness becomes an opportunity to practice compassion. Write counter-arguments when your inner critic snaps. You're too soft, you respond. My softness is my strength. Over months, this practice rewires your neural pathways, priming you for genuine resilience. Emulate Michelle Obama, who spoke candidly about her struggles under global scrutiny. She modeled that strength need not be silent, that sharing doubts can amplify leadership. You don't need a global platform to start. Your sphere of influence begins with your nearest relationships. By inviting authenticity into your life, you teach others it's safe to follow. Finally, anchor your rebellion in ritual. Light a candle each evening as a signal that you permit yourself to feel. Write one honest letter to someone you trust about your fear, your anger, your hope. Let the act of writing become a rite. You commit your vulnerability to paper, and in doing so, you transmute it into something solid and visible. This is your rebellion, black women, to break the unspoken contract that forbids softness. Each conscious acknowledgement of feeling is a strike against the old narrative. Each shared tear is a declaration of interdependence, of community over isolation. As you claim vulnerability, you unlock a tier of awareness richer than any shield can offer. You stand at the edge of two worlds, black women, one ruled by unbreakable facades, the other by courageous authenticity. You've seen how steel shields bruise the soul, yet you fear the unknown of softness. Here is the truth. Your vulnerability is not a liability. It is the seed of a power more profound than any armor could ever offer. Feel the pulse of your own heartbeat, that steady drum guiding you toward wholeness. Imagine it as a river, its currents carrying both the flood and the trickle. You can't dam the river without surrendering its life-giving flow. When you allow your emotions to course through you, tears, laughter, tremors of fear, you become more alive, not less. The same current that carves canyons also nourishes valleys. Hear Nietzsche's call to embrace your contradictions, become who you are. Black women, your essence is woven from threads of strength and softness. To deny one is to unravel the tapestry. Consider the lotus flower, rooted in murky waters, yet unfolding its petals toward the light. Its beauty depends on that very murk. Your trials, your wounds, your fears, they are the fertile soil from which your compassion, creativity, and courage emerge. You've been taught that to lead is to command from above, never from within. But real leadership begins when you unveil your humanity. Remember Frankl's insight. Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. When you speak your truth, you transform pain into purpose. You give others permission to follow, to speak, to heal. How many lives could change because you chose to speak rather than to stand silent? Feel the revolutionary energy in your breath as you claim your right to feel. Each inhale welcomes possibility. Each exhale releases old contracts of stoicism. You don't have to renounce your achievements, or grit softness doesn't cancel your victories. Instead, it infuses your triumphs with heart, turning every milestone into a beacon of empathy. Picture a circle of black women gathered in candlelight, each flame flickering with a story. One speaks of heartbreak, another reveals her fear of failing her own dreams. In that circle, there is no judgment, only recognition. You discover that your vulnerability resonates like a chord, harmonizing disparate notes into a symphony of connection. This is your revolution, to choose communion over isolation, empathy over exile. Now feel the tremor in your chest when you imagine letting someone see your unguarded self. That tremor is the crack in your armor, a portal to intimacy. It's where courage lives. Not the courage to conquer another, but the courage to be seen, to be known, to be loved in full spectrum. What if the gaze that meets your candid confession returns with acceptance rather than derision? Embrace your shadows as part of your illumination. Jung wrote that the shadow is the greatest teacher for how to come to the light. Black women, your hidden traumas and unspoken fears are not monsters to be slain, but guides to be befriended. When you bring them into the light of your awareness, their power over you dissolves. You become the alchemist, transmuting past wounds into wells of wisdom. Let your tears baptize you into a new way of being. Cry when your spirit demands release. Laugh when joy wells up. Tremble when fear visits. Notice how each genuine reaction recalibrates your nervous system toward health. Science confirms that emotional expression triggers neurochemical cascades, endorphins, oxytocin, natural analgesics that soothe and strengthen. Each honest feeling becomes a brushstroke in your masterpiece of resilience. Hold fast to this ultimate truth. Strength and softness are not adversaries. They are twin pillars of your humanity. You are both the roaring lioness and the gentle mother, both the fierce warrior and the tender poet. When you claim both, you no longer sacrifice one for the other. You wield them in concert, forging a life of depth, authenticity, and unstoppable grace. So, black women, will you keep hiding behind a shield of steel, or will you step into the circle of light, letting your vulnerability kindle a revolution of authenticity? Will you let your voice, tremulous and true, become the trumpet that calls others home? The question is yours to answer. What legacy will you write with the ink of your unveiled heart? Feel the quiet power surging beneath your ribcage, black women. The power of a truth released. In the hush after a storm, you rediscover the stillness that cradles possibility. Your vulnerability is not a surrender. It is your sword forged in the fire of authenticity. Each tremor of feeling is a signal flare guiding you toward the person you were always meant to become. Recall the image of the phoenix rising from ashes, its wings ablaze with renewal. Your vulnerability is your ashes, what remains when the pretense burns away. From that place you can choose to reignite yourself in vivid color and luminous strength. You do not have to emerge unscathed. Your scars are proof of your journey, not blemishes to hide. Black women, your life is a tapestry of trials and triumphs, woven together by threads of honesty. Imagine walking into a room unarmed, letting your tears shine in the light rather than quelling them in darkness. Watch how the atmosphere shifts, permission ripples through the air, inviting others to uncloak their own truths. Your act of openness becomes a catalyst, not just for your healing, but for a collective transformation. What if your tears became the rainfall that nourishes a garden of shared resilience? Sense the paradox settling into your bones. Softness is not weakness, and strength need not be hard. You can be a river that carves canyons while sustaining life on its banks. You can be a song, both plaintive and triumphant. When you honor both sides of your nature, you unlock a tier of existence where clarity and compassion coalesce. You no longer choose between being tough or tender. You are an orchestra blending every instrument into a symphony. Consider the power of a single unveiled moment. One confession of doubt can shatter isolation. One admission of fear can build a bridge between hearts. Each time you speak your truth, you dim the power of stigma and magnify the light of empathy. You become a living testament to the idea that vulnerability is contagious in the best way possible. Black women imagine the ripple effect when your circle no longer measures worth by how often tears are hidden. Science confirms that communal vulnerability fosters trust and cooperation. Research from Harvard's Project Aristotle showed that teams with psychologically safe environments where members feel free to express doubts outperform their peers by 50%. If you create that space in your personal and professional circles, you not only thrive yourself, but you elevate everyone around you. Your courage becomes the cornerstone of high-trust communities. Hear the echo of Audre Lorde's words. Your silence will not protect you. Your silence once guarded you, but now it shames you into solitude. Your vulnerability instead invites solidarity. It is the clarion call that says, "Here I am fully human. Come as you are." What if you let that call resonate through every corner of your life? What alliances might you forge? What creativity might you awaken? Envision the legacy you want to leave. Will it be a monument to invulnerability, cold and unfeeling? Or will it be a living garden rooted in compassion and watered by honest tears? Black women, the choice is yours. You have inherited a legacy of endurance. Now you can bequeath a legacy of authenticity. Imagine daughters and nieces emboldened by your example, learning to speak their fears and cradle their dreams without apology. Hold fast to this final truth. True strength is not the suppression of feeling, but the mastery of it. It is the alchemy of turning pain into purpose, fear into fuel, sorrow into song. As you step into that mastery, you become unstoppable, not because you hide your wounds, but because you integrate them into your power. You become both warrior and poet leader, and lover, storm and sanctuary. And so, black women, will you keep building walls around your heart, or will you tear them down? Brick by brick, made of unshed tears and unspoken words. Will you continue to wear armor that rusts in the dark, or will you polish your vulnerability into a mirror that reflects your most radiant self? The ultimate question stands before you. How will you wield your vulnerability to forge the strength that changes everything?